No.
Happening, folks. Today we are looking at The Coffee Table from Spanish director Kaia Casas. It is a 2022 or 2023 film, depending on which festival you saw it at. I saw it last week. This is May 2024. This movie is listed as a black comedy. However, I would argue there is no shade of black dark enough to warrant that label. The movie stars Estefania de los Santos and David Perea. As far as I can tell, not a lot of people have seen this movie yet, but the critics and normal folks like you and I that have seen it love it. However, listen, I hate it when people start their YouTube video off by saying, I wasn't gonna make this video, because it normally means it's some big trendy topic they have no actual interest in, but they want to cash in on the views anyways. Having said that, I wasn't planning on making this video. Now, I have reviewed loads of movies, and I've been actively seeking out messed up, scary things since I was really young, but this movie actually messed me up. I'm gonna break the recap down into 3 acts, and as usual, I will talk about what I think the film gets right and wrong in terms of storytelling, but I have to specify something. Your reaction to this movie is going to depend entirely on your own life experiences. So although I will be discussing the movie's technical aspects as always, I couldn't avoid including how the movie affected me personally too. And I tried. So what you're about to hear is my 3rd version of this script. Let's go. The movie opens with an unflattering, unforgiving close-up of Maria, played by Estefania de los Santos. Maria's delivering her first child, and we're right there along with her, sharing the physical and emotional intensity of the experience. When we hard cut to a few months later, Maria is standing with her child in a furniture store next to Jesus, played by David Perea. Jesus is the child's father and Maria's husband, and the birth of the child resulted in the couple moving into a larger apartment. They're in the furniture store to purchase a coffee table. If there are any actual moments of levity in this film to justify the black comedy label, they'd probably come from this salesman. He's been selling his entire life, he has a quick answer for everything, and he does not understand the concept of no. Nor does he have any shame, as he's absolutely unfazed when Maria calls him a terrible, sleazy salesman. To give us a hint of the couple's circumstances, Jesus feels entitled to choose the coffee table, as Maria's chosen literally everything else in their relationship. That applies to the rest of the apartment's decor, their son's name, Cayetano, which Jesus despises, and the daddy title as well, as he does not feel prepared for fatherhood. The salesman tries to convince Maria purchasing the table will make both of their lives better, and as a final selling point, he tells Maria the glass is unbreakable, and he says it with such vigor he wakes the baby. Maria's a no-nonsense girl, and she hates the look of the table and the salesman, so she storms off when Jesus insists it's his choice. Back at the apartment, as Jesus is finished climbing the stairs, the couple is met outside their door by a neighbor and her daughter, Ruth. After Maria's taken the baby inside, Ruth confronts Jesus. She has an unhealthy teenage obsession with him, and she threatens to frame him for inappropriate things if he continues to shrug off her advances. Ruth is an adorable-looking young lady, which makes it shocking to hear things and language coming out of her mouth I can't even hint at on YouTube. Suffice it to say, in different circumstances, this subplot would serve as an incredible storyline on its own, and that fact will contribute to driving home the potency of what we are about to watch. Back inside, Jesus puts the table together while the couple air some of their dirty laundry for us. It's obvious he adores his new child, and it's clear he's taken to fatherhood very quickly despite his initial reservations. Jesus' brother Carlos is coming around for dinner later with his girlfriend, who happens to be 18 and half his brother's age. Maria is annoyed by this, among many other things from the sound of it. While he's assembling the table, Jesus realizes a screw is missing, so he calls the salesman to bring it around immediately. Maria decides to go shopping for dinner to get some time to herself, and she leaves in a huff, slamming the door behind her and waking the sleeping baby. Jesus' fatherly instinct kicks in, and he takes his son in his arms and walks him back and forth while telling him how much his father loves him. The camera then takes us outside of the room as we watch and listen to a loving dad trying to pacify his now screaming child. And when Jesus jokingly tries distracting Cayetano with the glitzy gaudiness of the new table, he trips. The table's unbreakable glass breaks their fall. The crying stops immediately. The opening act comes to a close with the infant cut in half, off camera. So how was that for black comedy, folks? Very quickly, the inciting incident in a movie or a novel is crucial to the story's success. It sets up the tone, it establishes the main conflict, and it shoves the main character into the rest of the plot. I cannot think of a more powerful and engaging inciting incident than the one we just watched. Also, this opening act did a brilliant job introducing us to Maria and Jesus. In a very short period of time, we understand the world they live in and their complex personal relationship. And despite the extremity of the subject matter, I cannot fault this opening act at all. How about some more? The second act picks up with Maria choosing a wine for dinner. She bumps into an old friend and her daughter. They haven't seen each other since Maria's given birth. The friends catch up, and we learn how excited Maria is to finally be a mom. We also learn how impressed she actually is with how well Jesus is taking to fatherhood. Maria phones home and puts her friend on to say hello, but Jesus disconnects the call immediately. And over the sound of his hyperventilating, we watch as he slowly removes large shards of the supposedly unbreakable glass from his hands. Then, in the paralyzing grip of shock, he carefully places his son back into the basket and arranges his blankets to keep him warm and comfy. Still in shock, he lifts the basket and Cayetano's big stuffed bear. And in a haze, he starts frantically hunting for cleaning products, only to realize they haven't gotten it yet. So he rushes down to the neighbor, and young Ruth answers the door, and she picks up right where she's left off, insisting Jesus tells his wife about them today, or she will. The mother eventually brings him what he needs, and just as he's opening the door again, the salesman arrives with the screw and traps Jesus in a 10-minute-long conversation about not having any friends and how lonely he is. After he finally brushes the man off, he gets to cleaning the grisly scene. He tries reaching for something under the chair, but he can't bring himself to do it. As soon as he's done showering, Maria comes home. And as she's making her way up the stairs, he stands over the balcony railing, surveying the height. But the door buzzer stops him from jumping. And when he opens the door, he looks terrible, and Maria's in a panic, thinking something's gone wrong. He chooses to tell her he's struggled to get Cayetano to sleep and forbids her from going into his room and waking him up. Then she sees the blood on the carpet. He explains the glass broke and cut his hand. Given the morning they had with the salesman, that sends Maria into a maniacal laughing fit. Half an hour later, they are preparing dinner together, and as Jesus is numbly cutting vegetables, Maria is still howling until she decides to go in and check on her child. I'm fully aware the act of recapping this story is going to take away some of its potency. This situation might even seem absurd to you. I am sincerely struggling to convey the sensations this scenario creates within you as an audience member. But as a lifelong fan of messed up, disturbed movies, and as a full-grown adult man, the tension in this film had my stomach in a knot for 60 minutes. Maria heads in to check on the baby, but Jesus heads her off and says he'll do it, so she grabs the monitor instead. And right when he thinks he's in a safe place for another few minutes, the monitor picks up a dripping sound coming from the cot. Maria hears it, but the doorbell rings. The brother Carlos and his girlfriend have arrived for dinner and to meet their new nephew. Everyone comments on Jesus' appearance, but he blames it on the blood loss, which everybody believes as he's white as a sheet and there's a giant stain on the rug. Well, everyone except his brother believes it, who knows something is wrong. He reminds Jesus he's always there for him, and he insists he's not leaving later on until he tells him what's wrong. They all end up in the baby's room, inspecting the decor, and the tension makes your teeth throb. Anytime there's blood on a door handle or the wall, it's just presumed to belong to Jesus. After what feels like an eternity of Jesus sweating at the door, they finally return to the dining room for dinner. Jesus isn't speaking, but he is knocking down the wine. The subject turns to Carlos becoming vegan to accommodate his 18-year-old wife, who is also vegan. And then the conversation inevitably ends up on parenting and parenthood. Maria says she loves Jesus very much, but it's not comparable to her love for the baby. She feels complete now, and she believes she'll never do anything as important again in her life. Then rather unexpectedly, Carlos shares the news that they're going to be parents as well, which is why they were asking so many questions about parenting. When Jesus fails to respond to the announcement, it kicks off an argument. The pressure finally finally overtakes him, and he tells his brother he couldn't care less about the fact he's gotten a poor 18-year-old girl pregnant, as it's just another one of his screw-ups. Jesus goes to the bathroom, and he decides to text Maria to tell her what happened, knowing full well by the time she's read it, he'll have thrown himself over the balcony. But his brother interrupts him and insists on an explanation. So they go to the baby's room. Jesus explains what happened and declares his intentions to jump to his death, as he cannot face telling Maria the truth. The second act comes to a close when Carlos looks under the baby's blanket and asks Jesus why the baby has no head. This second act was very effective, but it's not what I would call a traditional structure. The central conflict absolutely intensifies, but it does so in a very different way. Normally, in a second act, the character faces new obstacles and makes new decisions that end up making things worse for them. But Jesus cranks up the tension to unbearable levels by continuing to make the same decision over and over. Also, traditionally, in the second act, the subplots increase the main tension by adding to it or complementing it. But the main conflict in this story is so intense, we don't even notice the subplots any more than Jesus does. I mentioned earlier the subplot with Ruth would have made a brilliant movie all by itself, but Jesus is so overwhelmed, it doesn't even matter anymore. Now let's finish this off. The doorbell rings one last time, and it's Ruth, the young neighbor, who is fulfilling her promise to tell Maria what's been going on between her and her husband. Maria brushes her off as they are dealing with the situation inside, but young Ruth is relentless. She says Jesus tried kissing her earlier in the elevator, and for a moment, Maria wonders if this is why he's been acting so strangely. Everyone convenes in the living room, and Carlos tries making his way towards the chair with a devastated face. But Ruth sets her dog down, and it bolts straight for it. Carlos shouts for Ruth to get her dog, and he retrieves what's rolled under the chair to bundle it up. But as he's doing it, Ruth sees what it is. And with the dog covered in blood, Maria goes into a panic, and Carlos begs Maria to get out of the apartment while he's holding the object in a baby blanket. But she refuses and insists he hand it to her. And he does. When she realizes what's happening, she walks slowly towards the balcony amidst the crying and the screaming. And the movie ends with the police talking about a married couple who plunged to their deaths. And the mother was clutching her son's severed head. They try to interview Carlos for information, but all he can say is the coffee table. And the story ends with the suggestion Maria, Jesus, and the baby have been reunited on the other side. Last year, my number one pick was When Evil Lurks, and so far, this year, The Coffee Table is my number one pick, and it's for the exact same reasons. As a result, I was not surprised at all to learn When Evil Lurks director Damien Rugna and The Coffee Table director Kaya Casas are, in fact, great friends in real life. And if these two superb movies represent two filmmaker friends trying to outdo each other in horror, not only do I hope it lasts for years, but I'll also gladly donate every penny I make on this channel to ensure they can keep it going without ever having to involve Hollywood. Third acts are where the action culminates and peaks. Our main characters usually transformed by the story's events, either for the better or for the worse. In some stories, the main character's not transformed at all, but the characters around them are. And for those of us in the audience, it's great if there's some sort of emotional payoff in the third act to compensate us for spending all this time with these characters. And finally, all the tension built up throughout the story is meant to be released at the end of Act 3. And I think this is a big part of why I can't get this movie out of my head. Every character in this story was absolutely transformed by the inciting incident, but not in any way they could have ever bounced back from. There was no emotional payoff for us either. After sitting through the worst afternoon a writer could possibly conceive of, it was black comedy to imply the family was reunited in death. I mean, what the hell kind of payoff is that? And finally, in terms of the tension being released in the third act, the tension in The Coffee Table was 10 times that of your average movie, so it would have required 10 times the effort to write us back out of it. But they didn't. The tension only let up because the movie ended. But I'm still carrying it around. And anybody I've spoken to who's seen this movie has said the exact same thing. I believe this movie is a masterpiece, but everyone deals with stress and tension in their own ways, and that is exactly why I can't recommend this movie to anybody. I don't know a lot of people that have heard of this movie, never mind seen it, but if you have seen it, I would really appreciate hearing what you thought of it. As always, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, folks. It's me, Johnny, from that video you just watched, although I'm sure you know who I am, right? You should subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, it's easy to do, and it makes creative people like myself who thrive on compliments feel all warm and fuzzy. And if you like that last video, click on this next video because it's just as amazing. Click on it.